Tires hissed on heat-soft asphalt. Horns bled into one long note that seemed to hold its breath with the city. A navy fastback Mustang coughed and lurched to a halt in the painted crosswalk, outside a narrow brick bodega whose front window carried the kind of signs that tried to hold back time. Hand-lettered oil specials, a flattened cardboard ad for a defunct cola, a bit of tape that once held a flyer from a community car clinic. A teenage boy held his phone high, angling the camera to catch the chrome pony on the grill and the suited man pacing in front of it. "We're live," the boy said to no one and everyone. "He stalled it, y'all. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage." His smile was quick. Then he looked serious because the man in the suit looked like money and anger both measured themselves on his watch. Witnesses would later identify the man as Miles Caro, real estate developer and car collector whose name appeared on hospital donor walls and ribbon cuttings. The car was his, they said, his pride, a 1967 Mustang he had personally driven down from a warehouse bay detailer to feel the street. The street was not interested. The hood clicked up. Heat spilled. Caro pressed his palm to the crossbar like a person checking a fever. Sweat ran a clean line through the dust on his temple. "This is ridiculous," he said into his phone. "No, not a toe. I need this running now." He looked around. People looked back, their faces making a quiet row of mirrors. It was a Thursday after school hour, grocery bags rustling, backpacks dragging. Somewhere behind the bodega, a radio argued about baseball. A girl in a faded denim jacket and scuffed school shoes stepped out from the shadow of the alley. She carried a worn-out spiral notebook and a pencil tucked behind her ear. She was small, 12, maybe 13, with a tight crown of twists pinned up under a fraying head wrap. Grease marked 2 fingers. The witnesses say she didn't look like a mechanic. She looked like she had learned to be listened to by knowing exactly where to put her words. "I can look," she said. No bravado in it, only an offer. Caro lifted his eyes from the phone. Late afternoon sun lit the gold in his irises and the fine lines fatigue had cut into his face. "Sweetheart, no." The word landed and lay there. He gestured over her shoulder as if to conjure a professional from the air. "Shop? Tow? Anybody? I don't need a kid near this engine." The boy with the phone lowered it to say, "She knows stuff. Ask Miss Joyner about her. She fixed Mr. Delgado's Civic with a rubber band and a paperclip once. For real." The crowd's attention made a small circle of trust around the girl. She stood a fraction taller inside it. "Let me look," she repeated. She didn't move to touch, not yet. It was patience. People who'd seen their advice dismissed learned patience like a second language. He gestured, a small surrender. "Fine, don't burn yourself." She walked to the open mouth of the Mustang like you step into a church you don't belong to, but you respect. The engine's heat was a living thing. She leaned in, nose crinkling slightly, listening to clicks and cooling. She took her pencil from behind her ear and touched the eraser to a hose, very lightly, like it might speak back. She smelled sweet fuel, too sweet. Her hand found the fuel filter's belly. Warm. Too warm. The line quivered. "When did it hiccup?" she asked, scanning the clamp like a librarian reading spines. "Half a block back, it coughed, lost power. I gave it gas, it died." Caro's eyes flicked from her face to his time. "You flooded it. Could be vapor lock, could be dirty fuel clogging the filter." Her voice was lower now, intended for the car. "Got a pen?" she asked the boy. He handed it over. She unscrewed the front of it, slid the hollow tube free, the small black straw of it catching light. "Hair tie?" she asked. The boy snapped the band off his wrist, offered it like a prayer. "Whoa, whoa," Caro said, stepping forward, then stopping. "If you break something—" She looked at him and didn't blink. "You already broke it." There was no disrespect there, only fact, and the corners of his mouth pulled tight like he wanted to argue and couldn't. She slid her hand down, loosened the hose clamp with the ball of her thumb. Enough to slip the pen tube into the line to hold it open, the smell of gasoline sharp. She aimed it neatly into a plastic bottle a woman offered without asking. "Not too much," she murmured. She flushed the filter, the thin stream of fuel showing dark flecks as it ran clear. Her fingers worked the tie around the filter to keep tension where the clamp had tired. Her motions were small, precise, and absolutely not a guess. "Turn key, but don't start," she told him. He slid into leather that stuck to his back and turned to accessory. The pump hummed. Now off. Now on. She watched the filter fill, no bubbles. Now start. The Mustang started like it had remembered its age and decided to show off. Its idle settled, even and low. The crowd made a sound like relief you feel in your ribs. The boy's phone came back up as if lifted by a string. Caro looked from the tachometer to the girl like he'd been handed back a piece of himself he thought was lost. He stepped out, closed the hood with care. "How did you—" he began, and then he saw the ring on her finger. It was on her right hand index finger, worn smooth by the kind of wear that comes from thinking with your hands. No diamonds, no flash. A simple silver band flattened and widened top center into the shape of a hex nut. If you knew cars, if you knew tools, you recognized humor and love. It was a ring that said what you valued. He stopped with the kind of stopping that changes the next hour of your life. He reached for her hand to see the ring, and his fingers closed around her wrist before his head caught up to his hand. The shift of bodies around them was immediate. A man in a reflective vest stepped closer. A woman pushed a stroller back a foot. The air changed. "Hey," the boy said. It carried, not loud but with warning built into it. Caro seemed to hear it. He let go and held his palms up. I'm sorry, I just... That ring, where?" His voice did something it hadn't done all day. It stuttered. "Where did you get that?" He pointed carefully, not touching. "Gift," the girl said, her face closing like a hand when rain starts. "A while back." "From who?" He swallowed. His eyes were on the ring like a diver on the patch of light above water. "A woman who taught me how to listen first," the girl said. She wasn't being cute. "Said I had good hands." She lifted her shoulders like she hadn't asked for that compliment, but she kept it, because it mattered. "What was her name?" His voice was a wire. "Please." It was the first please. She thought long enough that some of the tension leaked out of the space around them. "Ava," she said finally. She came to Joyner's garage with a box of bolts and a bag of sugar. She poured sugar into a bottle and told me it was the fastest way to ruin a tank if I wanted to ruin one. Said it with a face that said, "Don't do this to people." She made a game with the bolts, made me find the right one with my eyes closed. The girl's eyes went to a point over his shoulder like she was watching memory play back. She laughed at my jokes, left smelling like vanilla and old books. Ava. Witnesses would later say the name hit him like weather. They saw him blink and lose a heartbeat of time. Ava Caro had run a program at the Caro Foundation called Wrench and Words, the kind of community workshop people either praised as meaningful or dismissed as a photo op, depending on how close they'd let themselves get. She had died 2 years ago, a quiet, surgical complication that left a hole no money filled. Her husband had stepped back. Boards had moved budgets like chess pieces. "And she gave you this?" he asked. He was careful now, respectful of air and space. "After I got Mr. Delgado's Civic to stop coughing long enough to take his wife to work," the girl said. "She said I reminded her of her favorite mechanic. Gave it to me, like a promise." She looked down at the ring like a person touches their throat when they realize they have been holding their breath. A black and white patrol car rolled slow, then stopped. An officer stepped out, adjusting his duty belt with 2 fingers, professional face on. "Everything okay here?" he asked, eyes moving from the pulled-up hood to the small ring of people, to the biggest dynamic in the frame, a white man in a suit and a black girl with her hand recently held. The boy with the phone hit his screen and swung it down to his chest. "We're good, officer," he said, cautious. Several phones did not move. Caro pivoted his whole body so that he faced the officer and the girl. "We're fine," he said. "She just fixed my car." He gestured at the Mustang, the idol polite as an apology. "I was asking about her ring, that's it. I got excited, grabbed wrong, my fault." He let his hands hang where everyone could see them. The officer looked at the car, at the girl, at the ring. He nodded. "All right," he said. "Try to keep the lane clear. Ma'am, nice work." He gave the smallest smile, the kind that lives in one corner of the mouth when someone knows their presence is not needed. He drove on. People exhaled. "What's your name?" Caro asked. "Amara," the girl said. "Amara what?" His voice was softer. He was a person not trying to be a company for a minute. "Amara Coleman," she said. "You can just say Amara." She lifted her chin like it mattered to say it the way she wanted. Caro nodded. "Thank you, Amara." He reached inside his jacket, produced a card. It was heavy stock, embossed. He held it out. "Let me pay you for your time at least. And if you'll let me, I'd like to talk to you more about where you learned. You said Joyner's garage?" He had a pen in his other hand, an impulse to write that felt like control. She looked at the card but didn't take it. "You want to pay me? Take your car to Joyner's for a tune. Her rent's high. Her electric bill's higher. That helps us more than me getting $40. He blinked. No one said a number. That was telling. He felt a small rush of being seen and indicted by a sentence that wasn't trying to hurt him. "I'll bring it by tomorrow," he said. He thought of his schedule, which believed itself not subject to the calendar. It shifted without argument. "I meant," he started to say internship, and caught himself saying it to a child whose day was already full of school and work and trying to make a life. "Amara!" Miss Joyner herself appeared then, arms crossed, sleeves rolled to reveal old Marine Corps ink. She had seen the crowd and come from the garage at the end of the block. "You okay?" she asked, measuring the space, the faces, the man. "I'm okay," Amara said. She tilted her head toward the engine. "Vapor lock and dirt, pen tube. Your rubber bands are gone." "I'll invoice the boy," Ms. Joyner said with a wink at the teenager, then looked at Caro. "You Mr. Fancy Caro, or just a fancy car owner?" It was a joke dressed like a simple question. "Miles," he said, swallowing the last name because it didn't get to walk everywhere. "I wanted to thank—" "You can thank her by not touching her without asking next time," Joyner said. She didn't raise her voice. Her words hit where they needed to. "And by paying for what you broke." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He didn't say what he used to say to people who called him sir and ma'am. He didn't make a show of adjustment. He simply realized a piece of shorthand didn't serve him here. "You still run Wrench and Words?" Amara said a woman named Ava came by, gave her a ring. He looked at the ring like it might speak his wife's voice if he listened correctly. "Used to run," Joyner said. "Your foundation cut it. Said resources, said metrics. Folks like metrics because then they can say kids failed numbers instead of us failing kids." She didn't apologize for the tone. Grief had burned the sugar off her words a long time ago. Ava came by, though. She didn't send a check and a photographer. She came and got oil on her blouse and called me Joy like we'd been girls together. She gave that child a ring and a note and a promise. We didn't see the second and third parts. "A note?" His voice tightened. Amara shrugged. "It came in the mail after she came. Had a lot of words I didn't fully read. It said they wanted me to come tour a lab and there was a date, and then another letter said it was postponed, and then no more letters." She said it like you say weather. She had learned to not give that pile of paper the power to make or unmake her days. He was not used to having to piece together his own life with other people's receipts, but he had to. The crowd had thinned. The boy had stopped recording and was texting someone about a Talbot's ad he saw on the wall of his own feed. The world turned. "I want to come by," Kara said to Joyner, "with the Mustang, to pay and to talk. Because if that ring is what I think it is, then I need to fix more than a filter." He looked at Amara. She was watching him like you watch a storm pull its act together. Not scared, prepared. The next morning the Navy Mustang rolled into Joyner Auto and Youth Lab with the light pebbled sound of tires over grit. The sign had been painted by someone's careful hand. Block letters, the O in Joyner a little tilted like it had grown there. A mural took up the sidewall. hands of different sizes holding different tools, a ring on one finger painted silver in the sun.
We obtained security footage from a neighboring storefront that shows Caro stepping from the driver's seat with his tie loose, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled. He stood out. He seemed to know it. Inside, the garage was a cathedral of light and steel. Lifts groaned gently, sockets chimed as they fell into cases. The front counter held a bell that had rung for 11 owners before Joyner. Behind the counter, a whiteboard had "Pay it forward" written in red, underlined twice. The electric bill was taped to the wall with a magnet shaped like a wrench. "You came," Joyner said, not surprised. "I said I would." Caro set his keys down on the counter like he was shifting something heavier inside himself. "What do I owe for the tow yesterday and the diagnosis?" He waited for the number. He had the kind of money that could eat other numbers whole. That didn't matter today. 50 for yesterday, plus what this baby needs that I can prove it needs, Joyner said. And if you want to pay my electric bill this month, I won't say no. But I'm not going to give you a plaque. Her eyes were gentle and iron at the same time. "Pay the bill," Caro told his assistant on the phone. "No plaque." He meant it. He held the line until his assistant stopped offering a tax letter. Amara appeared from under a lifted Camry, safety goggles sitting on her hair like a bird that had forgotten to fly. She wiped her hands on a rag that had known this room longer than she had. "You're here," she said. She looked at the Mustang. "We can tune the carb real nice if you stop babying it. Let it breathe." He smiled without meaning to. "Teach me," he said, and didn't mean it like a challenge. He meant it like he had decided he would actually learn. It was new for him to ask and mean it. She moved with respect through the car's mind. A torque wrench clicked a precise little song. The engine smoothed like it had been waiting for someone to speak its first language. He watched. He asked questions and waited for answers. He felt something in his chest that wasn't money or fear or performance. It was the feeling of being in a room where the smartest person was a kid, and that was exactly right. "I recognized the ring," he finally said while she adjusted the idle speed. "My wife? She had rings made for the girls who came to the workshop, the ones who... I don't know if the right word is promise. It was more humble than that. She just wanted them to have something real that said what their hands could do was beautiful and valued." He swallowed. Inside, she had them engraved. A.C. He met Amara's eyes, for her name. Ava Caro. "But you're Amara Coleman." He laughed once without humor. She would have liked that coincidence. Amara slid the ring off and held it up to the light. "I never looked on the inside." She squinted, then held it so he could see as if he might need the proof. AC was there. His wife's initials. Also hers, the way circles work. "I didn't finish something I was supposed to finish after she died," he said quietly. The sound of a ratchet in the bay behind them mocked his pause. "I set things down. The Foundation cut programs quietly because we say phrases like shifting priorities, when what we mean is we can't carry the grief that comes with attention." He rubbed his eye. "I am sorry." He said it to the air, to one person, to a community. He said it like he had to hear it land. Joyner tapped the electric bill with a pinky finger. "You can be sorry, and you can also fix." She looked down at the work order. "Ava left paperwork with us for a scholarship. For this one. We sent forms. The Foundation said they'd get back. They didn't. Then she died. Then your CFO said the words you said. We don't hate y'all for being tired, we just... Kids can't eat mea culpas." He nodded. "Give me a day." He left the Mustang on the lift and walked to the Caro Foundation building a few blocks north, where the glass reflected clouds that didn't exist yet. According to internal emails and board minutes reviewed for this story, the Wrench and Words program had been classified under Low Strategic Impact Q3,
the year after Ava's death. A memo circulated with phrases like low lifetime donor development correlation, intangible outcomes difficult to present to stakeholders, and restructure into passive grant-making. The signature block carried his name in cleaned-up digital script with no evidence of hand or eye reading. In a conference room with too much air and no noise, he sat opposite his chief financial officer, Nora Sinclair, who had built empires on cost curves and could make a case for anything if asked. "We shuttered W&W because it was a time suck," she said with her hands folded, like truth lay there. Ava had heart for it. The math didn't work. We pivoted to scalable scholarships. You signed off. Twice. She slid a PDF toward him like she was laying down a card she knew would win. He read the pages. His signature at the bottom of a paragraph that closed a circle. The sound of the click of the torque wrench rang in his head. "Where is the file on an individual named Amara Coleman?" he asked. He was past politeness. He was naming things. "Who?" Sinclair said, then scrolled. "A. Coleman, yes. Proposed by A. Caro for a named pledge pending progress. The follow-up was marked no further action after Ava passed." She didn't look sorry. She looked like she thought she had done her job. "Bring me the whole file," he said. "Print it, email it, I don't care. And Nora? If we cut something because I couldn't stand up straight in grief, own that. Don't hide it in ROI." He stood up before she could answer because he could hear the spin before she threw it. The file held a photocopied note in Ava's handwriting that Joyner would have told you looked like leaves when they fall on your windshield in October. Small, surprisingly strong. "For AC," it read. "Hands that listen, words that land. When the world calls you one thing, keep the names that hold you. Daughter, scholar, mechanic, poet. College or no, this keeps your story circular." It smelled faintly like almond oil, because paper keeps secrets like that. He carried the file back to the garage like you carry a bowl you don't want to spill, and stood in the doorway long enough that Amara looked up and tilted her head, a question mark. "It was real," he said. "Ava meant you to have a scholarship. We didn't get it to you. That's on me. If you'll let me, I'd like to fix that." He placed the folder on the counter. "And not just for you, for whoever follows, but you first." He said it without the apology performing itself. He said it like a man who had learned that a promise was a plan with dates. Amara touched the folder like it could bite. "I like fixing things," she said, "but I'm not sure about school. Money helps Mama keep the lights on and Grandma's medicine. I can't leave those undone." She didn't look at the dollar signs. She looked at the days. "Then we design it with that in mind," he said. "Pay to the household, weekly. Flexible tutoring here if you want it. A stipend for your help in the shop, and the scholarship doesn't vanish if life doesn't point straight at college. It's not a trap." His voice stumbled on the last two words because he'd built too many traps with nice names. "You tell me what you need. We design it around that. Joyner participates, not me solo. No press until you say. And I want kids like me in here without feeling like we owe you our thank yous forever just to be allowed to stand by the lift," Amara said. She said it with her chin up. It wasn't a test. It was terms. "Yes," he said. We observed the first of those meetings, held not in a boardroom but at a plastic table dragged to the center of the garage after hours. The light was soft. The smell of rubber hung around the edges. Present. Joyner, with grease under one thumbnail. Amara, with her ring flat in front of her like a coin that told the weather. Caro, with a legal pad and a face you read as making itself new in public. And two other kids from the neighborhood Joyner had asked to sit in because, if you're building for kids, you don't build without kids in the room. They wrote the words that would govern the next months between them. No photos without permission. No schedules that don't include dinner at home. A weekly check delivered Fridays by noon. A toolbox for each participant labeled, not to be shared unless they want to share. A clause for day's grief sits on your chest like a bag of cement. No penalties for missing when life yanks the carpet. Meanwhile, Caro's internal machinery groaned as it tried to pivot. Sinclair sent a cascade of emails with subject lines like urgent, media risk, and alternative pathways, and concern. If you want to support them, do it quietly, she wrote in one. The optics of reversing a board decision looks like we acted without prudence. He read it and thought of how many times he had accepted optics in place of sight. He fired her, quietly. The board minutes recorded it as a mutual decision to seek new leadership. The words work until they don't. Not everyone liked it. A developer with designs on the block whose papers showed him as a cousin to money called Caro 2 nights after the meeting and said words like loyalty and partnership, and then implied words like threat. Caro listened and then hung up, then called Joyner and told her what was coming. Possible pressure on her landlord, on her deliveries, on the red tape that arrives when nothing else works. We'll write it down, Joyner said. We don't fight whispers with whispers. We fight them with receipts. Receipts arrived. A county inspector showed up with a clipboard and found nothing wrong but a fire extinguisher needle shy of green. We fix tiny things so other people can't use them against us, Joyner said, and sent Amara to fetch the refill. One Thursday, 2 men from a towing company tried to take the Mustang off the lot while Joyner was in back. Witnesses say Amara stepped forward with her small hands in her pockets and asked for a work order. They didn't have one. She pointed to the camera on the corner and said, "We keep video, we keep names. You want to come back with paper? Come back in daylight." They left. That night, Caro moved the Mustang to his private garage and changed the locks, not because he was afraid for the car, but because he realized how many ways he had made other people be careful around his things. He invited Amara to that private garage 2 Sundays later. It lived in a building with no sign, a space as white and clean as an operating room. 8 cars slept there under soft covers, Ferrari red, Porsche slate, a Jaguar the color of winter. He had never wanted anyone to say holy in this room. He wanted it now, if it was earned. Who works on them? Amara asked, touching nothing. I do, he said, a little smile when he knew it was ridiculous. And Russ. He nodded to a tall man in his 40s with forearms like a lathe and the easy arrogance of a master who knows he learned more than he was taught. Russ looked at Amara like a pebble in his shoe. You a YouTube mechanic? Russ said to her, laughing so he'd own the joke if it failed. You gonna tell me oil's oil and everything's the same under the hood? Amara's face didn't move. I'm a joiner mechanic, she said. I know what I know. I know likely problems. I listen first. She looked past Russ to the rear of a Porsche where a harness hung like laundry. She squinted. The wire had been routed around the wrong side of a bracket, rubbing a soft half-moon into its insulation. That will cut through if you don't fix it, she said quietly. Russ looked, frowned, and then, because he was not a child, fixed it. He didn't apologize. Not then. He kept looking at the harness like it had betrayed him. I'm not here to embarrass you, Caro said when Russ's pride settled. I'm here to make sure I never forget what I owe people whose names don't get engraved under mine. He meant it, even if it sounded like a quote he wasn't ready to own. On a Tuesday morning the month after, the Caro Foundation hosted press in the garage at Joyner's, not in their own marble. They put 3 folding chairs under the mural and a table with a coffee maker that had been cleaned for the first time since the 4th of July picnic. The press expected bold type. They got names. I don't have a statement, Caro began, a camera catching the way his tie hung a little too loose like he'd dressed in a car. I have a confession. We cut a program that mattered because it didn't fit a graph. That was our fault, and I put my name on that fault. We are reopening Wrench in Words here, not in our building, funding it for 5 years and then endowing it so it doesn't depend on my mood or my mortality. The first scholarship for this season goes to Ms. Amara Coleman, who already fixed one of my mistakes before I told her sorry. He stepped back. He didn't look at the reporters. He looked at the kids. Applause doesn't sound like it does in movies when it happens in a room with oil stains. It sounds like knuckles on wood, like a sock in a dryer hitting metal. It sounded like citizens. A reporter asked whether this was reputation management. Joyner cut her eyes toward the camera and said, "Reputation ain't a pie we serve around here. Rent is. Groceries are. You want to write about something? Write about how this keeps 10 kids from having to choose between class and a job that pays in grease burns." She shook hands with the reporter after. She didn't dislike her. She disliked the question. Amara stood because Joyner reached under the table and squeezed her knee. She looked into one of the cameras and almost laughed because she could see the teenage boy from the first day standing behind it, nodding at her like, "You're good. Go." "I don't have a speech," she said. "I have a ring. My initials are in it, and someone else's. That's how circles work. You give something, it comes back around if people are watching and don't let it go under a couch." The room laughed because it needed to. "I don't know if I'm going to college. I do know I'm going to fix Mom's car so they can get to work and make sure the rich folks get this lesson. If you step on our fingers when we're holding you on the edge, you fall too." Joyner swallowed a laugh she had been trying to not let out. "Also," Amara said, because she had planned this part in her head, "we could use a new tire machine." The room clapped again. Someone's pen scratched "yes." After that, goodness didn't become a straight line. It never does. There were weeks when check delivery was late because a vendor hadn't been paid in a chain that started in a downtown office and ended in a kitchen where light bulbs blinked. There were days when a developer offered the landlord more money than Joyner could imagine, and she sat in the back room with the bills and cried, then wiped her face and made a list. There were nights when Amara fell asleep with her head on a book and woke up with the imprint of the paragraph on her cheek. But there were also days of beautiful, small rightness. A woman in her 70s named Ms. Winters rolled in with a Buick that had a duct tape bumper and left with a new bracket because Joyner knows a welder who owes her. A boy named Keon changed his first set of brake pads without any cursing and grinned like he'd learned magic. A man who'd laughed at the ring brought his daughter to the shop and asked if she could watch. And there was the Mustang, which lived at Joyner's for a month, less captive than guest, with a sign on its windshield written by Amara, "Touch with eyes. Thank you." Caro stopped by and learned to bleed brakes. He held the hose and waited when Amara told him to wait. He understood in his bones something that sent emails cannot teach. Respect is not a one-time gift. It is daily work you do with your hands. According to the county recorder's office, the lot next door that had been slated for purchase by Caro's usual allies was instead bought by a new trust whose paperwork listed its trustees as Joyner, a public school teacher named Mr. Patel, who had 2 laptops and 600 names of kids who needed them, and a pediatric nurse. The trust used a clause in the zoning to declare the lot a community education space. The developer filed suit. The judge threw it out with 2 sentences and a smile you could hear in the transcript. On the day the Ava Caro Wrench and Words Lab sign was hung, the air smelled like rain that didn't arrive. Caro held the ladder. Joyner drilled. Amara stood on the curb and looked across the street as if measuring something only she knew how to measure. She touched the ring. "You could have pulled it off my finger that first day," she said without looking at him. "Called it theft. Called it stolen. Called the police. You didn't. You went to papers you signed yourself and made them tell on you. That's a start. It's not all of it." "I know," he said. "I'm trying to make sure the math on my head matches the math on my hands." He gestured to the sign, which was slightly crooked in a way that would someday endear people to the building. "Thank you for not letting me off easy." "We don't do easy here," Joyner called from the top rung. "We do possible." She put the drill down and looked at the sign and then at her crew below. "All right, back to work." People out here got cars that need them. The last scene of this chapter is a late Sunday evening when the garage is quiet except for the slow tick of hot metal becoming cool. Amara sat at the workbench and turned the ring on her finger until the AC caught the light and threw it in a thin line on the wall. The teenage boy stood by the door, his phone loose in his hand. He wasn't live, he was just here. "You want to say something?" he asked gently. He had become good at not pointing the camera when it wasn't his to point. She thought about it. "Yeah," she said. She looked over at the mural, at the hands painted there, one of them hers. She lifted her chin slightly and spoke to a future she could see like a grill's reflection in chrome. "Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage," she said, and her smile did not ask for permission. "And if you're in a place that thinks you need a title to tell you what you are, we got free titles here. Mechanic, poet, big sister, neighbor, teacher. You can pick more than one." She slipped the ring off and placed it on a hook above the bench and then slid it back on, like practicing letting go and holding on. Joyner turned off the final light. The garage found its night sounds. Outside, the street wasn't quiet, not really, but the kind of not quiet that lets you sleep because you know people are watching. According to notes found on a sheet of paper taped inside the cabinet door by the sink, a place where you put truths you don't want to lose, Amara later wrote a sentence she would repeat when asked what the story meant. "A circle is a promise you make with witnesses. What goes around must come around, yes, but only if we stand there together to catch it." She underlined together. She underlined catch. This isn't where the story ends. The work is dull sometimes, and that is where the dignity lives. But if you were to end it here, the last frame would be a kid with a ring that fits both her and a woman who made it, a man who learned to wear a different kind of name, and a garage that hums because the people inside decided that competence and care look good next to each other. In the quiet, Caro said one more thing that landed like a postscript worth the stamp. "Respect the smallest wrench," he said to no one in particular. "It often turns the biggest bolt." Amara didn't turn to look at him when she replied, "And respect the smallest hands. They might be holding you up."